Hey everybody, it's time for another episode of Grant Draws, and I wish everybody in the chat could see the confused and or delighted looks on my guest's face as they watch the theme music. I think you went back and forth between confused and delighted.
Yeah, that's a natural state for me generally. So it
Cool, cool.
was it was the music was lovely. My girlfriend found it very relaxing.
Yeah, apparently your girlfriend is sitting next to you.
She is.
She said I just saw her post that.
Hello. Oh gosh.
There's her arm.
Hello.
Oh, so it's a guest appearance.
Miss not appearing in this film.
So I'd like to welcome everybody. Grant Draws is sponsored by the Independent Creator Directory. Do you know what the Independent Creator Directory is? Out of curiosity.
Me? No, I do not.
So my friend Joe Bachman, he is trying to create the Internet Movie Database, but for independent creators, not just comic book creators, but also if you have like a role playing game, or if you are maybe, I know there's a lot of prose writers in the chat here tonight actually, and I just realized since I'm introducing everybody and not drawing, I think I will put your thing up on the screen. So like I've said, we can only do one person drawing at a time, so we kind of take turns. So anyways, that's what the Independent Creative Directory is all about. If you want to find out about getting in the Independent Creative Directory, you can find Joe Bachman on Facebook. And he's a good guy to know anyways, because he really likes independent comic books, and he's just a very supportive guy.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great.
So Carl is here. Hi, Carl. How's it going? Don is here. Don has been following me around today, which is good. I think actually that's it. Oh, and of course, your girlfriend. I'm trying to find her. Is it pronounced Murgo?
Yep, Murgo.
Okay. Hi, Murgo.
Hello.
So I think I met both of you through the cartoonist kayfabe Facebook
Yeah.
group, correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So have you guys? Is that a group that you're pretty active on?
I read it. I don't really post a ton in it.
Yeah.
But, I just sort of like read the memes and things mostly.
And you know what? I almost forgot to post your link. So Graye has a coffee page, which I think I had heard of coffee, but I don't think I had ever. Oh, wait, why did I put that in private chat? And I also told Graye before we started this that I'm still getting used to this. We'll put it that way to be polite, okay? Maybe one day I'm going to be good at this, but that day is in the future.
You've been doing fine so far.
So coffee is where you can find her comic book, The Beauty Queens, which I think I'm going to buy issue 1 as we speak. Oh no, I'm not going to buy it because I need a login name. I'll sign up for a login later, but you just have to take my word that I'm going to buy a copy of your comic book.
I believe you.
Oh, and I almost forgot the most important thing. Graye also did a cover for my comic book, Memoirs of the Morbid. I think you probably did the most popular cover.
Oh, that's great.
It was between that and one other.
Yeah, they were all really cool. Like looking at them.
Yeah. Yeah, all the covers turned out really good, and I was really happy with them. And of course, your cover was cool because it was like a slasher type character, which I hope
Yeah,
was fun to draw.
that was really fun to draw, actually.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about Beauty Queens?
Sure. Beauty Queens is a comic series I've been doing about a punk band from Omaha that's composed of 3 trans women, and they get into shenanigans, and they end up sort of on the wrong side of a lot of fascists and cops, and they have a lot of interpersonal problems and stuff like that. Primarily, it's a comedy. There's a little sort of melodrama and a little bit of social commentary, but primarily it's an excuse for me to write violence and put bad words on a piece of paper.
Oh, so they get into a lot of fights while they're out playing gigs.
Yeah, it starts. The first issue starts with the police raid, and then there's a big car chase in the second issue. The third issue is mostly sex, and then the one I'm working on now is a mix of black comedy and some violence.
Oh, do we get to see cops getting beat up?
We did in the first issue. I think we will. It's a 6-issue series.
Yeah, sorry if there are any Blue Lives Matters people in the audience. I really like seeing cops get beat up.
Yeah, there's going to be a few roughed up by the end, I promise.
Nice. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot. Carl's brother is a cop, but so forget I said that, Carl. Because I just learned that on Friday. But I don't know. It doesn't sound like Carl gets along with his brother that well, so maybe he won't mind. Yeah, but I mean, so if any of you guys are looking at the coffee page, yeah, Graye's artwork is really awesome. It's obvious. Obviously, I think your artwork is awesome because I hired you.
Yeah, so you have good taste.
Right, exactly. So, I'm curious so how is coffee kind of, a lot of people ask me like, why am I on this website but not this other website, or vice versa. What made you choose to do a coffee page?
Well, when I originally joined Coffee, like its only function was to leave tips. Like somebody could leave like I think it's set to just be like $3 as like the standard. So that's originally why I just had it. It was just for like give me some tips if you like what I've been posting. But they've been they added a bunch more functionality. There's like a subscription service, kind of like Patreon. And then they also added a store, and then they added like function for commissions if you want to do commission work. So like, I just kept adding things that were really useful to me. So I've kind of stuck with it.
Neat. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing that's nice, at least from what it looks like here, you have like different, like you can kind of buy when you feel like it. You're not reserved to a 30-day period.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, that's one of the things I kind of like about it. It's not so focused on the subscription part like Patreon is.
So speaking of which, before I get too far along, I should mention that I do have a Kickstarter going at the moment. As I said, I'm not very good at this because you would have thought that was the first thing I brought up, right? But I'm sorry to interrupt the interview. I will put the post. So this is Beowulf 6, the last issue, or at least the last issue of this storyline. So if anybody, I think everybody in the chat has already backed my comic book, but if there's anybody in there who hasn't, you guys should check it out. So what program? So I'm assuming you're doing a page from Beauty Queens.
Yes.
And what program are you using here?
This is Clip Studio Pro.
Okay. Cool. And you prefer that to Photoshop or any of the other programs?
Yeah, well, I primarily just work off my iPad. And so far Clip Studio's had like the price and the functionality I need. Sometimes I will go into Procreate for certain kinds of effects or brushes I want to use, but primarily stick to Clip Studio.
So I'm old school. I still use Photoshop, but a lot of the comic book creators I talk to tell me that if I took the time to learn Clip Studio, I would like it better. Do you think that's true?
And yeah, and having a grounding in Photoshop, I think, would set you up for quite a bit of it. There's a lot of similarities in the workflow.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the only reason why I don't make the switch is because I don't feel like learning a new program.
That's totally legit.
But I'm sure if I learned how to use it, I'm sure I would prefer it.
And the nice thing is you can import Photoshop brushes into it. So if you have some faves, you can bring them over.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of Photoshop brushes, so that would probably help me. So you said issues 1 and 2 are mostly violence, and issue 3 was sex.
Mm-hmm.
Which end of that spectrum is issue 4 going to be?
Well, it's definitely not sex. It's sort of we're sort of setting up to the third act. So this is kind of where everything starts bottoming out for everyone. So there's a little bit of action, there's a little bit of gross out comedy, and then there's a little bit of sort of backstory drama. This issue is a little different than like the first 3. The characters are generally all together doing things, and this one they're sort of split up, and each one gets a little section in the issue, and they each get sort of their own mini story.
Neat. So now, is this an ongoing story, or do you have like an arc, like where it's gonna, like, is it gonna end in issue 5, issue 6, or is it just ongoing?
This storyline closes out in issue 6. I have like other stories I plan on doing after this. I've done the first thing I ever did for this series was just a like 8-page special, just to sort of a proof of concept to myself. That takes place at a Pride festival, and then I started on this, and I've done like there is there's a Patreon called the Wigglebird Mailing Club, and every month, if you pay into it every month, they send you a zine from a new queer creator. And so last June I did just like a little tiny story for that. So there are definitely characters I'm going to keep working
So
with.
the story that you did for this zine, this was also like in the Beauty Queens world, or
yeah
characters?
Yeah, it's an unspecified time like after this story. So it was just it was just sort of kind of a lark, just sort of like a confrontation at a restaurant, and it's mostly played for laughs.
So it's kind of it's not necessarily tied in with this same storyline, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't need to know about this to understand that, and nothing in that affects really anything in this.
So I'm curious how you got interested in comic books, and what made you kind of want to segue from just reading comic books to drawing them as well.
Oh gosh, I've always really been into comics. I remember when I was very young, the first two comics I ever received from my parents was a copy of Rom and a copy of Micronauts.
Oh, okay.
So like I really didn't have a chance to not be kind of a weird kid because that's a lot for like a 6-year-old to deal with. Um,
So I'm not quite sure where we sync up like as far as age wise. Are you talking about growing up like in the 80s or more the 90s?
oh, in the 80s, I'm 49, so
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So we're close in age. I'm 43. Um, but you probably remember a little bit more of the 80s than I do. Um,
Yeah, especially like the early 80s. This probably would have been like 80, 81 when I got these.
so Mike so Micronauts, I believe, was what was that Michael Golden that drew that?
First 12 issues, yeah.
Yeah, the first 12.
Cool. And so were those the two comic books that kind of turned you into lifelong comic book reader?
That really kicked me off to like be interested in them. Like, immediately like that after I found out there was like a Godzilla comic and Shogun Warriors. And so sort of chasing early on like comics that tied into other things I was interested. Um, but I was always like, I would always buy them sporadically growing up. And I remember um, I didn't really become like an avid collector until about I would say like 85 when Crisis on Infinite Earths came out,
Oh, okay.
which is just this very mysterious thing because like I didn't really know much of the DC universe, and you're just sort of like thrown in the deep end with all this, and I was just fascinated by it. I just reread it and reread it, and then
So what do you think it was about that in particular that drew your attention? Because I was under the impression that most of the people who read Crisis on Infinite Earths were like diehard DC people, but you're
kind of,
saying that this
okay.
was like your first DC comic book.
It's not. It's the first one I remember specifically like trying to collect all the issues of it.
Yeah.
Prior to that, probably the comic that uh, just before that, I found copies of Son of Ambush Bug, and I think I was reading that. The art was absolutely fascinating to me. I didn't understand any of the jokes because that's also kind of a lot of deep in the weeds like DC references. So in some ways, I think I really just find out like the mystery of it. Like there's this sort of vast unknown universe of characters that I have no idea about, and it was just sort of like it was just a strange experience. It kind of hung with me.
Yeah, I think that's what I liked about comic books, or at least one of the things too, where it was like this was in the days before Wikipedia, so you would read this comic book where it's like, oh, you're reading a Spider-Man comic book, but Daredevil shows up, and you're like,
Yeah,
what the who the hell is this Daredevil guy? Like, wait, like why is he alluding to being blind, but he can still like do acrobatics and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that was what slowly discovering um like these big vast worlds.
yeah, absolutely. I really like being kind of lost in mystery like that. And I think shortly after that, I read Watchmen at probably way too young an age. So,
Okay. So now, do you think you got or understood Watchmen like the first time you read it?
no, like the end just sort of like made me mad, and I didn't understand it. And
Yeah, I
and
think I had the same. I think Watchmen had the same effect on me. Like it was a comic book that I had heard a lot about, And so I was like, oh, I need to read it. And then I'm like, wait a minute, everybody says this is the greatest comic book of all time.
Yeah, I kind of have that same. I'm like, where's this? Like, doesn't feel like an end, but it just sort of like trails off. I remember as a kid, I was just like, I remember complaining to my friends about it and stuff. And so, like, that kind of hooked me. And then about that time, in the early to mid '80s, there was a huge comic book store and like independent comic book boom.
Right.
So, like Turtles came out and like Flaming Carrot and what else was I reading at the time? Fantagraphics was putting out Usagi Yojimbo.
Oh, okay.
So it was just like a massive of things. A lot of them were very strange, and that seemed to be what I'd be gravitating towards.
So, and I always feel like there's a chicken or the egg kind of thing with every comic book artist. Like, did you like to draw first and then get into comic books because you like to draw, or did you learn how to draw because you liked comic books?
I was always pretty avid drawer from pretty young. I think I didn't really start making like sequential comics till I was probably about 9 or 10. I remember making some early ones. So they kind of ran in parallel for me. I think I was just always naturally inclined to draw no matter what. And then comics being like this very graphic medium, like drew me to it to work in that format.
So, I mean, do you remember how you kind of learned how to draw? Was it, I mean, did you have like books? Like, I mean, like I remember when I was a kid, I had Drawing the Marvel Way, right?
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, did you have like particular books, or did you just kind of like trace over the comic books you had?
I would read some of the like Brune Hogarth like dynamic
Oh
figure
yeah.
books, which I couldn't really understand, but I would try and copy the art in it, which kind of gave me a little bit to work from. There was, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it.
So Carl is saying Watchmen is one of those comics that you either like or hate. And I mean, I think at this age now, I love Watchmen, but I don't I don't think that I got it the first time. I mean, they probably shouldn't try to sell Watchmen to like 13-year-olds, right?
It worked for me. I mean, so maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you were saying about how like those Hogarth books, like when you like I mean, I think I remember as a kid thinking that they were like, the epitome of great art books, and now when I look at them, I do think the anatomy is a little wonky.
It is very I don't know, everything feels like, yeah, just it doesn't feel like natural in any way. Like it's highly constructed, almost to the point of like abstraction, and it feels weird.
Yeah, his bodies are very like lumpy. If I don't like, I don't really know how to explain it. Yeah, I don't know if you, I mean, I'm sure anybody who's watching this, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Burn Hogarth. I wouldn't even know where to begin to how to spell that, but
I think it's just like it sounds, Hogarth.
yeah, I wouldn't even really know where to begin how to describe this guy's art.
He just has these he has like figure drawing and sort of like dynamic lighting and shading, and he has these like intensely complex like calculations and like things you need to like remember to get it correct. And this is absolutely mystifying even now, like whenever you look at them.
Yeah.
But after that, like a lot of the time I wouldn't trace, but I would definitely like copy panels. Keith Giffen was probably one of the earliest artist that I really took to copying some of his
Neat.
Superman stuff.
So you liked
Yeah.
him on what, Superman?
Well, at first was in Ambush Bug. He was drawing Ambush Bug, which is where
Wow.
I first saw. And then he was doing Superman at the time, and stuff like that. But I didn't quite know who Kirby was, and that was the point where Keith's stuff was like very, very Kirby influenced. So
Yeah, I
But it
mean
was-
this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say I don't know that I necessarily understood, the genius of Kirby when I first saw him either. To be honest with you.
I really like. Yeah, I really responded to it, like the compositions and how dynamic it was. But I didn't really have the vocabulary to explain it, I think, to anybody.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So the late '80s was kind of an exciting time for you. Well, for anybody to get interested in comic books. I mean,
Oh yeah.
some of the greatest comic books of all time were made in the late '80s, right? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, like the two comics that kind of really changed my whole perspective on it was Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol
Right.
and Shade the Changing Man. I forget who wrote that off the top of my head, but those are the ones that made me like completely reconsider. Like,
Peter Milligan.
was that Peter Milligan? Yeah, I guess it was Peter Milligan. Those are the ones that made me like just sort of rewrote my brain and like what you can do in a comic. And
Yeah. I
And-
mean, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, and then I also encountered for the first time the art of Ted McKeever, which absolutely just floored me. Like I was completely obsessed with it. And I would recreate whole pages of his work.
So what was Ted McKeever's big comic book at that time? I know I've read other stuff by him, but I don't remember.
Metropole, I think, was the one he had coming out from Epic at the time.
Oh, okay.
And he did I had found him because I had seen the poster for Stray Toasters, Bill Siegevich's Stray Toasters, and that was intrigued by it. But at the same time, Ted McKeever had a 4-issue comic out called Plastic Forks, and I got the titles mixed up in my head, and I took Plastic Forks home instead.
Oh,
That's how I
interesting.
discovered him. So.
Cool. So, and then so you said you kind of got interested in drawing around this time, but you didn't make the leap into like making your own comic books.
I was drawing like sequential comics, and I think I made my first attempt at a complete comic book in high school. I think I was like a freshman in high school, and I made a whole comic about me and a friend going to hell to find somebody.
That's cool.
And ever since then, like from that first comic, like I've always been at least trying to put something together. Like this seems like just a thing I want to do a lot.
So are there comics out there before Beauty Queens?
Yeah, we maybe one or two.
Cool.
I did a comic called Mystery Cult that I never finished. Maybe I'll get around to it one day. Which is also about a band. Go figure.
Okay.
And before that, I did a webcomic for about 8 years called I-80. Which is
what's I-80 about?
Oh gosh, what is I-80 about? That's a good question. It's about the last person on Earth, and her friend is like a nightmare that doesn't have anyone dreaming it anymore, so it's sort of wandering around by itself, and it's a sort of them traveling across this like barren world, and then there's a whole very complicated plot about what happened, but it's basically like about these two characters' relationship. And
So you get to find out a little bit what happened to like the rest of the world, or
yeah, like by the end you get a complete picture of what's happened. And
cool. So did you enjoy doing web comics?
I did actually. It was definitely it was nice to have a fairly easy way to get work out in front of people. And I didn't find the learning curve of like converting images. Like at the time that comic I did, it was all done by hand, and then scanned in and converted over to put on the web. So it was, the whole process of learning how to like clean up your images and sharpen them up and things. I think it was like I enjoy the process. So all that stuff was actually kind of interesting and fascinating to me to learn.
Well, so before the show, you mentioned that your day job is as a graphic designer. So, so did you already kind of have like a little bit of an understanding, like how to use Photoshop, stuff like that?
I had some. Being incredibly old, like the Photoshop we were using didn't even have layers yet because it was like one or two, I forget which version we were working on. So, and when I was in graphic design class in college, using computers for everything was just starting. So we just got like a little bit of education on how to edit and do stuff with computers. A lot of it I had to kind of teach myself.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a graphic designer as well, and yeah, I've talked to people about pre Photoshop graphic design, and I do not envy that whole process.
Yeah, doing like actual paste up and things is rough. It's so much easier now.
So you had to like sit there with an X-Acto knife and cut stuff
Yeah,
up.
we did for some projects. Like I said, like we were just starting to get into using computers for things. So some of the projects were very traditional, and then some stuff they would let us work in Photoshop and PageMaker and Quark Express and things like that.
So is PageMaker is what a precursor to Illustrator?
Yeah, it's almost more of a precursor to InDesign. Like it was a layout
Oh, okay.
program.
Cool. Okay, cool. So I mean, I'm assuming you like doing it on a computer better. I would assume. I don't know.
The actual graphic design part, or
Well, or the drawing. Which do you still like to draw on pencil and paper, or are you pretty much mostly digital?
yeah, I will occasionally go back and work physically. So there's just kind of an element of randomness I think you can get working physically that it can't replicate digitally. Like like when the ink bleeds or you get some splatter or dripping and things, which I love. I love seeing that in artwork, and it's nice when that happens naturally while working rather than like I have to go get my splatter brush and drop some splatter in here and things like that when you're working digitally.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't worked like with paper and ink in years. So um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe doing digital art is kind of a crutch for me, but I don't know.
I've found that like my skills will transfer back and forth pretty easily. So like you ever want to pick a pen up again, you might be surprised that uh, how it works for you. But
Yeah, I think one of the things that I actually like the most about working digitally is how quick and easy it is to like experiment with different layouts. Um, where if I'm drawing something and I'm trying to figure out like um, should this be super zoomed in or should it be zoomed out? It's very easy for me to just select a drawing and then make it really small or make it really big.
Yeah, I do enjoy that too because I tend to make some big like changes as I work on a page sometimes. So I do appreciate that quite a bit, and just the like pure speed that digital offers. Like it can work, I can work really fast digitally. And I got a project like Beauty Queens. Like I want it to be a little fast and a little rough, to sort of mirror the story and like the world and things. So I find that's really digital is really helpful for that.
I also like not spilling bottles of ink.
True. Or having like inky hands for days on end.
Yeah. I do think sometimes when I was drawing with like real ink, sometimes I would get a little bit high off of the odors of the ink, and that was fun. But
You know, ink. The one thing I always had problem with ink is like I get sort of anxious about having it like loaded in the pen or the brush. Like, oh, this is going to dry out or drip somewhere. Oh God, I gotta get this down. And I don't know why I ever got like ink anxiety, but thankfully I don't have that digitally.
so I know your girlfriend also is a comic book artist.
Mm-hmm.
Was that kind of like a bonding thing for you guys?
Oh, definitely. That was yeah, that's one of our biggest connections is how much we like love comics and love making them, and we'll like wake up and just start talking about
Dark Knight Strikes Again.
Dark Knight Strikes Again, yeah. And stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely a thing.
You guys talk specifically about The Dark Knight Strikes Again?
We have had
all the time.
We have had so many conversations about The Dark Knight Strikes Again that it's probably ridiculous.
I love it and hate it. Like,
yeah, we have a real love-hate relationship with that comic.
So have you guys have you read the Rorschach comic by Tom King?
I didn't. No.
It so I just finished it, and we're probably gonna do, my wife and I do on a YouTube comic book review show, and I think we're going to do a review of it, but it is a weird freaking comic book.
Really?
Like Frank Miller is a character in the comic book.
What?
It's not just a character whose name happens to be Frank Miller. It looks exactly like modern day Frank Miller.
The Frank Miller.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very, very, very. I'm still. I don't know. Do you ever read a comic book and it takes you like a couple weeks to like process like, man, what did I just read?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff by S.S. Pliskin. I'd be like, what was that all about? I have no idea anymore.
Huh, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not familiar.
Oh, it's a couple. They do a lot of comics for Behemoth, and they're all kind of the same thing. It's all about like it's all like psychedelic body horror about people getting taken over by like parasites and things. Like every comic they do, and they're mostly just like visual treats. But every once in a while, like you're like, what was going on in that story? I still not entirely sure.
So what is it that kind of bent your mind? Is it purposely like kind of like ambiguous, or is it just kind of like trying to process like the horror of it, or all of the above?
it's a little bit like the ambiguous nature of what's happening story wise, and then like some of the imagery is just like very like, you know, slimy and pulsating, like things that kind of stick with you for a while, and you may end up thinking about them a little too much. It's like you can't get them out of your head.
It sounds like you guys have. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Were you
but
not finished? Well, I was going to say it sounds like you guys have similar taste in comic books that I do because um, I think I'm a bit of an anomaly because I like both like more mainstream stuff as well as like the weird indie stuff. Is that fair to say?
yeah, I think so. You know, we sort of dip our toes back into mainstream like DC Marvel stuff here and there, but largely we're more into the strange or, you know, indie stuff and things like that.
I don't read a lot of current day DC just because I feel like it's very hard to keep track of what's going on.
Yeah, same. Like I haven't really been following the Dawn of DC thing. I don't really know what's going on in it or what it's about.
The only time I read DC is when it's like something that's like out of continuity. Like I mentioned uh, the Rorschach thing. Um, I think that's really what really kills me about modern comic books is that it's, you know, Jesus Christ, there's just so many comic books out there, and in order to know what's going on, you have to maybe not read all of them, but read quite a few.
Yeah, it's a big commitment to like keep up if that's what you want to do.
And I mean, I know that this is the big complaint from everybody, but I mean, I can't read 50 comic books every month just because they're freaking expensive now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree on that. It's just it's too much to like keep up with, and I find I like go back and reread like 50s through the early 80s when it wasn't quite so continuity bound, and there's just something really free about like being able to do anything, you know, with Superman from one issue to the next, and I kind of adore it.
So okay, so yeah, so we were talking a little bit about your introduction to comic books. So through the late '80s, that's actually kind of when I started. Like it's funny. Like the late '80s kind of paved the way for the '90s, which is when all these really smart comic books went away, and then it was like dominated by a lot of really dumb comic books,
Yeah.
um, which is which honestly was my generation. Um, I don't know. Did you keep up with comic books through the '90s?
Um, a little bit. Like I definitely is like when Image sort of rose to popularity. I sort of definitely like dropped off reading most stuff. I've keep up a few things like the Max and one. You know, I'd still like keep up with like Usagi Yojimbo and a few other things at the time. But that was probably the period where I was like the most disconnected from comics for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you were a little bit older than me, and you were maybe a little bit smarter than me, so you kind of recognized that those comic books weren't very good. Whereas I was like, yeah, give me more of these ridiculous comic books.
I did find like weirdly enough, like I did find like the art really striking. Maybe I didn't think it was like, you know, good anatomy or anything, but there was something like so like overpowering about a lot of the artwork coming out from that time that there's like a strange appeal to it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, I mean, it was certainly. I mean, it certainly caught your attention, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Um, So was there a comic book that got you kind of back into comic books, or I don't know, or did you kind
Um,
of flounder for a while?
I did fonder. Probably when Gerald Way had the Young Animal imprint on DC.
Oh, okay.
That and I was like, well, I hope these aren't just going to be sort of like watered down Vertigo. And they had their own voice, and I thought they're interesting, and they sort of pulled me back into just sort of regularly starting to read comics, um, and I also was starting to learn about like the zines and like bootleg comics and like real DIY stuff, and that caught my attention too.
Neat. So, are you still? Well, you mentioned that you did a zine. You did like one little story for a zine, but did you ever think about doing like your own zine?
Yeah, I've done a few. I ran a B movie review blog for about 10 years, and sometimes I would take the reviews and turn them into little zines and just like leave them around at like stores and stuff for people to read.
Oh, okay, so is that a passion of yours as well? B movies.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge B movie nerd. So,
So, what are some of your favorite B movies?
um, my favorite of all time is a movie called The Visitor from 1979.
Okay.
It's got Lance Hendrickson in it, and this old lady in that.
Oh, Shelley Winters.
Oh yeah, Shelley Winters. It's sort of
Franco
like
Nero for 5
oh yeah,
seconds.
Franco Nero as Jesus, Space Jesus.
Space Jesus.
It's sort of it's an Italian movie. It's a mashup of like The Exorcist and Star Wars at the same time. It's incredibly strange, and it's got this just amazing orchestral score that's like they have this like reoccurring theme that will stick with you for the rest of your life.
And you said it's called The Visitor.
The Visitor, yeah. I think it's on Shudder right now if you have the streaming service.
And two.
I do
Oh,
not.
and Tubi. It's on Tubi.
Everything's on
if you don't
Tubi.
want to pay for it.
So I don't have. I don't have Shutter, but the one thing that I do have is I have a library card, so I'm looking for it on my library.
I highly recommend it. It's very entertaining. I was always on a big like B movie, like 50s B movie kick for a long time. So Robot Monster, always one of my favorites. Rewatch it pretty regularly. That's the one with the guy in the gorilla suit with like the helmet with the antennas on it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've heard that.
I just got the Blu-ray so I can watch it in 3D. I'm very excited.
Do you guys like so bad it's good movies as well?
Oh my god, that's all we do. That's the other thing.
Yeah, lately we're kind of super hooked on like shot on VHS movies, especially from like early 80s.
So I found a DVD called The Visitor, and it says an intergalactic warrior battles against a cosmic Christ figure against a demonic 8-year-old girl and her pet hawk. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so that describes it, yet also doesn't really even scratch the surface of that movie.
Well, I am reserving it from my my library as we speak, if I can remember my password.
I'm excited for your journey here.
Cool. Yeah, we like a lot of so bad it's good movies as well. I don't know. I probably couldn't even really give you like a good recommendation because we watch so many of them.
So do we. We're always like, well, we watch like 5 or 6 a week, and we forget which ones we watch sometimes.
I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes the line between movies that I like ironically and the movies that I genuinely like kind of gets blurred.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it was like during I remember specifically like, I was big into Mystery Science Theater 3000, and I would be watching the movie and they'd be making fun of it, but also at the same time I'd be like, I kind of like this movie. Like I kind of want to
Yeah.
watch it by itself too. And
Yeah, so I like Mystery Science Theater 3000. I also there are a couple podcasts that I like. Have you ever listened to How Did This Get Made?
yeah, love that one.
And do you like Red Letter Media?
Yes, absolutely. Just watch their Exorcist Believer review.
I haven't gotten around to watching that one yet, but yeah, those are two of my favorite. Um, oh no, I have exceeded the maximum number of failed logins for my library card.
Oh no.
Oh well. It says please try again in an hour. All right. Well, I'll request the visitor in an hour then.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure it's highly in demand.
Okay, so Carl's saying good night to everyone. Good night,
Night,
Carl.
Carl.
Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, so that's cool. So we have some we actually have a lot of shared interests, not just comic books, but also good bad movies or bad good movies, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. Misunderstood cinema.
So so one movie I will recommend to you, and we'll see. I don't know. You may have heard of this. You may not have. Have you ever heard of The Apple?
Yeah, actually, I just showed that to Murgo the first time like a few weeks ago, actually.
So I actually looked into getting. So I had like a relationship with a local theater here, and I actually looked into how to get the rights to do a stage production of it.
Oh,
And
amazing.
basically, I unfortunately I showed the video to or the DVD to the owner of this theater, and yeah, they were like, no, nobody's gonna pay tickets to see like a live production of The Apple. But
I'd go. So
I mean, it would have been awesome. It would have been it. We had somebody. We had somebody who would have been great as like the devil character, and we had somebody who would have been great as like the couple from Moose Jaw.
Alfie and BB.
Yeah, Alfie and BB. But that's one of those movies that like when I meet somebody for the first time, I'm like, okay, you have to watch this movie and tell me what you think of it. I don't know. Do other people have those type of movies where it's like it's almost like a like you show it to somebody and it's like a like how they react to it is you kind of get a better gauge of how of that person.
Yeah, I sort of like a litmus test for another person, see if they're on your wavelength. Phantom of the Paradise is kind of my litmus test for people.
Yeah, yeah, that's a weird one, right? It's kind of like Phantom of the Opera, like a modern day Phantom of the Opera, but not quite.
Yeah, it's a little Phantom Opera, a little Faust, a little Rocky Horror. In a lot of ways, that's the tone of that movie is like kind of what I strive to write a lot, where it's like really comedic, but there's like sort of a tragic heart in the center of it.
So I have a friend who does cosplay, and at one point he made the mask from Phantom of the Paradise.
That's amazing.
It was pretty cool.
I've always wanted one.
I wonder if they make one. I don't know. I don't know if that movie's popular enough.
It's got a fairly sizable cult following. Weirdly enough, it was a massive hit in Canada when it first came out. It played for like over a year.
Neat. Yeah. Again, like I wouldn't, if I were gonna give you bad movie recommendations, I don't even really know where I was. Oh, have you watched Miami Connection?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're real fortunate to have a Alamo Theater nearby. So,
Oh, that's cool. I don't even know where you guys live.
oh, we're in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. I would not have thought that you guys had a thriving cultural scene in Lincoln, Nebraska, but maybe that's my own.
Yeah, it's actually pretty surprising how many like creators and things we have here, and most of it's in Omaha. Like we have to drive a little bit to get there, but it's in the area.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who haven't seen Miami Connection, it's about a rock band slash karate school that sings songs about friendship and fighting ninjas. And yeah, it's awesome. I actually need to schedule a view party for that show or for that movie because um, if you guys lived closer, I would invite you guys. But I don't think watching I don't think watching Miami Connection would be worth the drive from Nebraska.
I mean, an excuse to get on Nebraska for a while. We'll take it.
Okay, well, if I schedule one, I'll let you know. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Or if the very least we could watch it at the same time in solidarity.
Cool. So I'm going to share your coffee again.
Sure.
I'm going to share your coffee. Go to her coffee page and check it out. Like I said, Beauty Queens looks awesome. As soon as I can sit down and create a password, I'm going to definitely or I guess I'm going to order Beauty Queens. And I am also going to be a good little marketing guy and repost the link to my Kickstarter. Yeah, so like I said, Beowulf, this is the last issue in this storyline. And it's by far the best comic book I've ever done. So check it out, guys. So we try to keep these to about an hour, and it's almost exactly an hour. So was there anything else you wanted to promote? I don't know if your girlfriend wants to be on camera to promote, or
I don't have anything yet.
You want to talk about Sclera?
As soon as I have something finished, you'll be the first to know. I don't have anything in a finished state right now. But soon, probably December, I'll have 2 things done.
That's awesome. That sounds great. We look forward to that. I think I've talked to you as well about being on the show, but if you want to come back, maybe when you have something out that you want to promote.
Sounds fun. Absolutely.
If you're going to be in Omaha on December 9th by any chance, where we're going to be tabling at Alternative Press Omaha. I forget where it's at.
Well, that sounds fun. Do you do a lot of conventions?
We're just starting. Murgo and I are going to be working under the banner of Worm Girl Comics here once she gets a project completed, so we can do that, which will probably be December, right? That's what we're shooting for.
I have one almost done, and then one.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, so my wife just started making comics. She was actually in that the Memoirs of the Morbid that you that you helped me out with. So that was her first comic book, and then I think she caught the bug. So
good.
that'll be cool.
Did she write it or do the art, or
she
both?
wrote it? She wrote it out like prose, and then I sat down and I figured out like, okay, panel 1 should start here, panel 2 should start there, and then we hired an artist to draw it. So it was neat.
Cool.
Did I send you a copy of Memoirs of the Moor? I think I sent you a digital copy, didn't I?
Yeah, I have a digital copy. Okay. I need to order one actually.
She wrote if you remember, it was the story about the grocery store. That was the one that she wrote.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That comic is actually at Trader Tape.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, we have it in our stores around here. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Neat. I mentioned that to you. What a perfect time for me to remember.
Oh well, at least we know now.
So that might actually be volume 1. Do you know if they?
Oh, it might be volume 1.
Okay.
I looked it's a week ago.
What color was it? The title?
Oh, it was blue.
Blue. Yeah, it was the first one.
Oh,
that's the blue one.
They must have been Kickstarter backers.
Yeah, we have 2 smallish comic book stores here, but they're pretty good about getting like small press stuff. And then Margot works at a bookstore, and she's been slowly turning it into an alternative comics and zine store.
Yes, and so this is why I love Dawn, because I'm really bad at self-promotion, and she's really good at promoting other people. Yes, and Dawn is correct. You can get a copy of Memoirs of the Morbid as an add-on with the Beowulf. See, if I was good at promotion, that would have been a perfect segue for me to promote my Kickstarter. But I'm like I said, I'm bad at promotion. But anyways, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks to you guys for being on.
Sure.
Thank you so much, guys. And like I said, Margot, if you want to be on the show sometime, let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I mean, other than just your voice.
Oh, sure.
Officially,
I appear when the comics appear, so will I.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Good night.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.